Awesome.
Welcome back to the podcast. We are here to talk about your visibility. We're going to be speaking about that with business consultant for entrepreneurs, Amanda Berlin from amandaberlin.com. Amanda works with clients on holistic visibility to help you grow your business and grow your impact as well, based on tactics employed during her 12 years learned in the corporate world. She's worked with Business Insider, Entrepreneur on Fire, WNYW, Fox 5, Bustle.com, the list goes on. So we are going to be talking about PR, raising your visibility, so much more. Amanda, glad to be talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Robert. I'm thrilled to be here.
And I'm thrilled to have you here. And so, I mean, as far as like, sometimes you hear about, PR, and I'm always confused, like, is it public relations or is it press releases or is it both? Because sometimes people say PR. I'm like, wait, which PR are we talking about?
Oh my goodness. Amazing. Back to basics. Okay. PR is public relations. That's usually what someone is referring to when they say the word PR. And I think that we lose sight of the fact that marketing and public relations is all about creating relationships with your public. That is what we're always going to be leaning into when I work with a client on their quote unquote visibility. It's what relationships can we create that we can then leverage in order to get you in front of more people. And the difference between PR, like you said, had worked in traditional PR for 12 years, but that was 10 years ago. And so I'm 20 years in this field. When I entered the field of public relations, no one really knew what it was. Now they have like college degrees in PR. I would tell my family, oh, I work in PR. They'd be like, oh, is that like advertising? And it's not advertising. It is distinctly not advertising, because PR is based on earned visibility that you earn because you have positioned yourself as an expert and have ideas to disseminate that enable the decision maker, whether it's a media outlet, a collaborator, someone who has a community that they're going to bring you into, a strategic partner, a conference organizer. It allows them to choose you and invite you to offer your IP, your intellectual property, your ideas, your viewpoint, your philosophy, your skill set to their audience for not because you gave them money, because you've earned it. And that creates an enormous distinction in the mind of the audience, because we as the audience know that you were chosen, that you didn't pay for that opportunity. And that allows us to create a more significant relationship with you.
Okay, and it might take a few minutes here for me to get my head wrapped around all that of getting the visibility and getting in front of the decision maker and kind of being everywhere, because you hear about this really often, right? About if someone out there has a new book or a business they're looking to grow or something like that, you always hear about how like you're going to need to do more work than you think you need to do. And you hear about how important it is to get your name out there, but then people kind of fall short about the specifics of that. But then when people do get into the specifics, when they say things like, well, be like send 33 emails a day or send these messages per day or go on LinkedIn and try to get speaking opportunities. I'm starting to, be on podcasts, things like that. I'm thinking like, okay, this seems more concrete, right? This seems more doable than just some vague, talk to X number of people or something like set up a website, set up a blog, make some YouTube posts, make some social media posts. I think that all sounds okay, but it seems sort of vague and lame. And so as far as the public relations, the actions that you think that we all need to be taking, the actions that you help your clients do, what should we be doing? What are the steps to be taken here?
Yeah, awesome question. So the framework of visibility that I employ with my clients has three kind of categories of visibility, and they all do something different for a business. So you pointed to launching a book, right? And that, we kind of will get the elbow or the whisper from our, whether we're self-publishing or even if you traditionally publish a book, that like, you're going to need to sell this book. This book is not going to sell itself. And so you need to really grow your audience and get it in front of as many people as possible. So the categories of visibility that I would prescribe for a book launch would be different than what I would prescribe for kind of an evergreen visibility effort, where you're just kind of like want to make yourself more known out there. And it would be different than if you were launching a podcast or if you were launching a new service. So the point is that I'll tell you the three categories, but I'm also putting a caveat in that there's a different recipe, a different, a dash of this, whatever of that from each category that you need to employ based on what you're actually trying to publicize. So the three categories of visibility are collaborations and alliances, your strategic partners, your relationships that are direct one-to-one, speaking in events. Where are you being seen on stages, and what kind of stages are you creating, or what kind of opportunities are you creating for your audience to have an experience with you? So even if you aren't chosen to speak on a stage, creating an opportunity where you can be seen as that authority through an event or workshop or something like that. And then the third category is media, which is what everyone thinks of when they think of public relations, but it's really a very small piece, or a third or less of the piece when it comes to visibility for entrepreneurs and small business owners. Media is actually the thing that will validate your business and not necessarily send clients your way. And so that's why I'm saying we need to employ each of these tactics in different capacity to a different degree based on what we are trying to accomplish with our visibility effort.
And so just to make sure that I'm understanding these three buckets correctly, you said that there's collaboration, there's events, and there's media. And the way that I digested that is kind of like there's like the sort of specific, less specific, and then even more broad and general, like collaboration. Like, okay, I know exactly like the type of person I'm going after. I will do the public relations to that effect. And then kind of the middle of the row is the events, where I use someone else's platform to get out there. And then the media is more like I have some, I don't know if you call them like peers or competitors, but like, other podcasters or internet marketers, they'll get on like, ABC 5 News to talk about cyberbullying, and their business will have nothing to do with cyberbullying, but they do it because they can say, well, here's a clip of me on, Fox Business, or here's a clip of me on some cable news thing, and they'll have the clip and they'll have the photo and they'll have the behind the scenes of them, like in the green room or something, and they'll be able to use the logos, and that kind of is more like a get on the map kind of thing. But so that's sort of the way I took in your three buckets. Is that on the right track, or did I mess up?
On the right track. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, super cool. And so you're making me think about all these different situations where, like, a few months ago, I took on a client where I was hosting their podcast. I was hosting a podcast that ran on Entrepreneur Magazine, and some of the weird guests I got some realtor lady who specialized in like luxury real estate. And she was going around on podcasts to get known as like the luxury real estate person. And I talked to like some people had like apps or like e-commerce products. But I was surprised at how just sometimes there would be just like a career 9-to-5er. Like there was like a guy that owned a bunch of law firms. And so sometimes people who just had like brick and mortar businesses would be doing all these media appearances, and you wouldn't really expect it, because up until that point, I always thought, well, wouldn't someone just be taking these speaking gigs if they have something to sell right now, if they're doing a launch right now? And I was like surprised at how sometimes someone just wanted to do it to like further their career.
Yeah, absolutely. So my big why behind the work that I do is, especially coming from the corporate background that I came from, where I was helping, as I always say, the loudest guys in the room be louder than their competition. These massive, I grew up in the PR world here in New York City. And so if I had been in LA or another city, my client base would have been different. But my client base was largely pharmaceutical companies and financial firms. And so my soul was not in serving those companies. I felt like I was, in some ways, if a new drug gets FDA approval and I was tasked with communicating how that drug is going to change the people's lives who have that affliction, that felt, I could sort of put like a decent spin on that for myself, but it wasn't fueling my soul. When I ventured to bring these tactics of visibility to entrepreneurs, to small business owners, it really became about helping these people who are passion-filled and impact-driven find their voice and figure out how they can connect with more of the right people so that they could make a living doing what they're passionate about. And so for that lawyer who owns a bunch of legal offices, this is, who knows what his motivation is in getting his voice out there, but I'm never going to begrudge someone the opportunity to amplify, their livelihood, amplify what they believe in, and hopefully they're using that power for good.
Well, okay, fair enough. And so, and as far as you said earlier, that it's kind of like adding the different spices to the meal, like using the different ingredients, right? Like sometimes you'll be making soup and you use a lot of this, or you make a steak and you use a lot of this. And so what's your approach to this? Like there's these three buckets and there's a million different things that we could be doing for all the different ways with the internet to get to get the word out there, to increase our visibility. So like, what's your approach? Do you say that, like, is it a matter of like using a certain percent of each type, or using like one focus on one type, or like a little bit per week or per month? Like, how do we attack this problem when there's literally like a million things we could be doing to get the word out there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different permutations. So my approach really is super, individualized and targeted to sort of what my client's unique goal is. But widely speaking, the idea would be that there are certain tactics that you could take on that are there's so many different ways to go about this. There are tactics that take longer to produce results. And some of those are the media tactics. Like if you are pitching a mainstream magazine, they have a 6 to 8, maybe a year long lead time. They're planning their content for next holiday season already. And so you need to be ahead of that. So that there are certain things that are just going to take longer to produce results. Even some of the relationship building and some of the podcast pitching could potentially take longer to build results. And so we need to look at what are your fastest tracks to visibility and those results, if the goal is to bring in more revenue, bring in more clients, what are your fastest track tactics? And then what are some of the things you want to do over time that are going to kind of add to the bottom line in terms of visibility, add to that sort of groundswell of awareness that you're going to build as you engage in these tactics over time. So the fastest track to visibility that will generate leads and new clients and revenue is collaborations and alliances, because that is the fastest track to building trust with a new audience as quickly as possible. Because when I engage with you as my collaborator, you've established an audience that trusts you. And provided I show up and give good information and do what I say I'm going to do, they will trust me because they've been introduced to me through someone they trust, who is you. And that's true with any collaboration you would engage in. I call it the trust transfer. So that's really the fastest track to building trust with an audience so that you can convert them into potential clients as soon as possible. The second, I actually look at these in a concentric circle model. So that is really at the centermost circle. The second is speaking and events. When you can be in front of a crowd, it's sort of a great combination between that collaborative thing where, they see you, know you, like you, trust you a little bit more quickly, plus they trust whoever put you in front of them. If you're speaking at a conference, they bought that conference ticket. They trust that content is going to be provided by experts. So they already trust you. And it also gives them an experience of you in person. And so that's really the second quickest way to generate that trust that will lead to increased client base. The third, like you said, again, this is something that you pointed to earlier. Media is really there to validate your business. So when someone sees you on a conference stage, or they experience you in through a strategic partnership, and they go back to your website and they see you've been featured in all this amazing media, then they can say to themselves, oh, I was right about that person. They have the goods. They've been featured in this media that I trust. I can trust them too. So the prescription, if I'm sort of generalizing it, would be that sort of concentric circle model. Start with collaborations and alliances, build out to conferences and speaking and hosting your own events, and then pursue media if your goal is client acquisition.
Well, great. And I like your metaphors here and explaining this, that there's the fast track, there's what you can do now. And then there's more of like the slow groundswell, which is more long-term, which maybe chip away at it, build at it, and which kind of, so that way it pays off in the future. And this is great because you're making me think about back when I was in maybe like my early 20s, I was just, and this was before podcasting was a thing, and I was just trying to get on stages. And as you know, that might be like weeks or months spaced out. And even if you do get on a lot of stages pre-pandemic, you'd be always traveling, and it would just be like such a kind of not fast enough, versus nowadays when podcasting is common, zooming in is common, all that fun stuff, then it's like we can be busy all day long, we're busy in a good way, and always be doing the kind of hopping from collaboration to collaboration. And also, so when I think of collaboration, what comes to mind are all of these kind of like outside the box strategies. Like I had a client once who he paid $30,000 to get like a coupon put in everyone's goodie bags at the Oscars. You're making me think of like, there's been times when I would approach people that own membership sites like that people would pay monthly for. And I would say, well, can I put my exclusive training inside of your membership sites? And so I love like kind of fun outside the box things like that. And you've mentioned about how sometimes there's a prescription, or it's like customized to each client. So in these last few minutes, as we're speaking here, do you have any fun, maybe success stories, case stories, or just kind of tales that you want to share with us that are kind of fun to kind of give us an idea of what a customized solution from you might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just had a call with a client earlier today. So my memory is very short. So I'm going to go with like an example that just happened. So I had a call with a client today, and we were this is sort of a combination of collaboration and event. We were talking about this new service that he's launching, and he has a relationship with an integrative physician in his area. And so he's going to partner with them to kind of leverage their audience, their local audience, to provide an experience and create a awareness of him and this new offering that he has. So they're going to have an in-person event where he's going to provide a workshop style offering, and then give them an experience on this, in this healing modality that he offers, and hopefully introduce this new audience to the fact that he is there and he's doing this work. That's one example that, was the first that came to mind because I had that conversation just about an hour ago. I am working currently on a large collaboration that I'm hosting, where I've put together a community of experts that are my friends, my business colleagues, and I'm sure this concept won't be far into the audience if you've heard of telesummits, but I always like to, it was advised to me to produce a telesummit, way back in my earlier entrepreneurial days, back, 4 or 5 years ago, that I really needed to like put a spin on that so I could really get behind it and feel enthusiastic about it. And so the spin on this summit is that I'm inviting everyone to come in and speak to the visibility tactic that they love best to use in their business, that has contributed to their success. So it is not a deluge of information in all these different areas of expertise, as usual telesummits provide, this sort of drinking through a fire hose kind of deluge of content. It's these short conversations specific to visibility so that we're mining the insights of all these successful women in business about what they've done to get in front of more of the right clients. And so that also, it's an event and it's a collaboration because I've enlisted 17 of my closest colleagues and collaborators to support this effort by bringing it to their audiences as well.
Well, super fun. And you're reminding me of, it's been so long since I've even like looked for telesummits to be on. Once every few years, that would be a thing where I would see one, I would contact the event promoter, I would see some familiar names, and I would want to be further associated with them. And it's been a few years since I've proactively looked for them. And as a speaker, they're so much fun to be on. And it's a good reminder just that some of these things kind of go out of fashion and come back in fashion. It seems like telesummits are one of those things where it feels like the cycle on that one's every like 4 or 5 years, where it's like no one's heard of them, and then now there's some big new thing, and then no one's heard of them again. So telesummits, like I miss those. I love those. It's a reminder to go and reach out. And you're reminding me that like there's been so many times when all it took was just like an email, just reaching out. If I saw some event happening, some conference, it wouldn't always work out, but sometimes just sending that email to that event organizer would help. And having sometimes like a clip from a previous appearance, kind of like you're referencing like the media thing. And then also so many times if I'd say, well, I know this and that person from who you know from Facebook or LinkedIn, or I know there's that person who's already speaking at this summer or at this conference that helped me so much. And so that just, it helps kind of cement in my brain the need to have these 3 buckets that you're mentioning, to have the collaboration, to have that network, to speak at events, and it also have the media as kind of like the cherry on top. And so as we're kind of approaching the end of our conversation here, I know that we talked about so much so far, but is there a specific favorite technique of yours that is not being used enough?
Ooh, I love that. Okay. So I was actually brainstorming something that aligns with this question just a couple minutes ago. And what comes to mind is based on what you just said, these conference organizers, these summit organizers, the media, even your collaborators, they're actually waiting to hear from you. Like they are in need of people who can provide great content. This is their job, like especially in the media, it's their job to provide great content to their audience. And so they're waiting to hear from someone who can provide them with ideas and someone who can show up and deliver something great so they look really good in front of their audience. So with that being said, a tactic that is not being used enough is a phone call. And especially as it relates to the media, I will say that it's maybe not necessarily the cold call, but the idea of suggesting a call is the quickest way to build a relationship. And that's really what we're after here. Public relations, building relationships, building strategic relationships that then can help us create relationships with more groups, a wider audience, more people. And so enlisting someone or enrolling someone in a conversation is the fastest track to creating a new relationship.
I like that a lot. So they're waiting to hear from you and do a phone call, get that conversation move forward. And yeah, I think I need to, after we are done with this podcast, I think I need to go and get to work and go and look at who I've contacted recently, because like this is always a thing that I neglect to do for a few months, and then I hit really hard. It's like working that list. Working a list of people I've spoken for, people that I've had on my podcast, and that whole idea of like we even mentioned at the very beginning, like kind of like almost the different like stages of awareness, or like people who are raising their hand a little bit and a little bit more. Like there's a whole universe of people that you could be talking to, and maybe some percentage will reply. And then maybe there's that whole like long-term going deeper and like just keeping the conversation going. All good reminders of ways for us to add value, make the best use of our time, help others, and also benefit ourselves. And then, that way we're on the right track. And so amandaberlin.com is your website. Is there any other resource that you want to mention, or a call to action, or basically after we've listened to the conversation with you, what's the next step? We're hungry. We want more. Where do we go to get more from you?
Amazing. I love that. So if you want to learn more about these three pillars or three buckets of visibility, I have a quick rundown training on these three pillars that will walk you through what they're good for, how you can start with each of them, and the impact that they'll have on your business. And you can grab that at amandaberlin.com/visibility. It's totally free. It's 30 minutes. You can even play it on like hyperspeed and get through it in 15 minutes. And it has a little workbook for you to follow along so you can take down some notes. But that's really going to frame out exactly what we talked about here.
Fantastic. amandaberlin.com/visibility. And Amanda, you and I both know that you can have the best business, the best idea, the best product in the world, but is someone going to just magically discover you and find you? Probably not. So you have to grab your own future by the reins or something cheesy like that and go out there and take some action. But it's a whole big mess of ideas and we never know what's outdated or what's the best use of our time. And I love your concept here of the three pillars because it helps us to kind of start to sort and make sense out of, okay, there are all these things I could do, but here's what's appropriate for my business and my goals. And then here's also what I can do right now with the time and the budget and the energy that I have. So the place to do that, the place to get that clarity, to get those next steps, to know what to do next is amandaberlin.com/visibility. And we will see you there. And any final parting words of advice, Amanda?
What I always lean into is the fact that all of us have something important to contribute. And it is our responsibility to do this work to make our voices heard. Because if we don't, we will feel unexpressed and like, our ideas have died inside us, but we're missing an opportunity to support the people who would work with us, the people who need us. And so this work of raising your voice, of making yourself visible is very challenging and confronting to a lot of people. But I think we would all agree that the discomfort that we might feel around being visible will be worth it if we can reach the people who need us. And so that's what I want you to walk away with is, can you take one action today to, even in your discomfort, start to move out there and make yourself visible so that you can support the people who need you?
I love it. Very inspiring, very helpful. And the very next step is to go to amandaberlin.com/visibility. That way you can take that one next step, just one step to get started, just like Amanda talked about, just one step. And I know it is uncomfortable now, so that way it can be comfortable later. amandaberlin.com/visibility. We will see you there. And thank you, Amanda, for stopping by.
Thanks, Robert.